This is from All That Jazz, my favorite movie since I was 15. It's a musical, but one in which Bob Fosse uses the elements of song and dance to tell the story of his life in a way so brutal and honest, it ends with him being zipped up in the body bag he knew was inevitably coming. It's a masterpiece. And this is from Singing in the Rain, correctly regarded by many as the most singularly perfect example of the classical musical genre. In it, Gene Kelly uses song and dance to capture the otherwise ineffable sensation of pure joy. It is also a masterpiece. There are many movie musicals I can list here as essential expressions of what makes the genre so uniquely exhilarating to those of us who have come to embrace the notion that it's okay for people to burst into song just right out of nowhere. But this presentation isn't about those kinds of musicals. No, it's about the musicals that haven't achieved this classic status, and that only remind us of the inherent goofiness of the genre. The musicals that give musicals a bad name, and that are used to justify many people's knee-jerk hatred of them. My kind of musical, a really bad musical. These are the films that frequently top the list of the worst films ever made, punished and despised for their tackiness and bad taste. But in their excesses, there is a joy to be found that is otherwise absent in works that know where the line is and how not to cross it. These films take the line and shove it up your ass. In Tommy, Ann-Margret sings as she wears a see-through white mesh jumpsuit and is showered in foam, baked beans, and chocolate. And it doesn't even count as a true bad movie musical because of its inherent self-awareness. A bad movie musical cannot aspire to camp like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It has to happen by accident, a combined group effort made with heartfelt sincerity. A bad movie musical is never bad because of a lack of effort or laziness. Each one clearly aspires to greatness, and each one fails spectacularly. When Peter Bogdanovich made At Long Last Love, he believed he was making a tribute to the musicals of his youth, and was so assured of his own genius that he didn't even notice or care that his stars, Burt Reynolds and Sybil Shepherd, could only barely sing and dance. A bad musical is what happens when someone says, "Hey, let's make a rock opera composed entirely of classic Beatles songs and have it star Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees." And they actually make Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band a reality because it was the 1970s and cocaine is a hell of a drug. It's found in the madness that allows Mae West to star in a film version of a play she wrote in 1927 when she was 34, even though it's 1978 and she's 85. Most horror movies are less terrifying than Sextet is, but the sheer chutzpah of his existence cannot be denied. Each of these films is like the emperor strutting around town in his invisible clothes without the little boy around to tell him he's naked. It's hiring Sylvester Stallone to co-write and direct a sequel to Saturday Night Fever just because he was Rocky. It's doing it again and having him play a cab driver who's transformed into a country music singer by Dolly Parton. Whether it's Staying Alive or Rhinestone, you had an inevitable disaster that could have been avoided if just one person said, "Wait, no, why would you ever do that? It makes no sense." And this is what draws me to these movies. Because I know, as someone who has pursued the often laughable existence of a writer, that at any moment, my ego is capable of blinding me to the same degree that it blinded the makers of The Apple, my personal favorite bad movie musical. It's the tale of two folk singers from Moose Jaw who tried to make it big in America, only to learn that show business is run by a big shot music executive named Mr. Boogaloo, who, it turns out, is the devil. We know this because at the end of the movie, the two singers are saved by Mr. Big, who literally drives down from heaven in a gold Cadillac. It's an extremely stupid movie. And I've seen it 24 times, and we'll see it 24 more, And that's because there's a triumph in its utter lack of shamelessness that goes beyond amusing incompetence and instead feels genuinely subversive. It's only in a film like Can't Stop the Music where you can witness the charming excesses of the disco-era gay lifestyle in a way that never actually acknowledges that its characters are gay. And yes, that is Bruce Jenner! For me, these films transcend their tackiness and become something even more pleasurable than a project everyone can agree is worthwhile. There's an exuberant radiance in their failure, a celebration of the unavoidable risks in creation. Each one tests the limits of the human imagination well past the breaking point. And the fact that Gene Kelly appeared in one of these movies proves that none of us are immune from this kind of failure. Every time we ignore the doubters and do what we truly feel is right, we risk creating our own Xanadu. And though the failure sucks in the moment, it brings with it its own reward. Because even if people look back at what you did and make fun of it, it's still there. It's remembered. And I would argue that being remembered for failing is better than being forgotten because you never even tried. These films stand out in a way that their contemporary successes never will. And that's why I love them, and why they inspire me. It's easy to see greatness in greatness. It's right there to be seen. That's why, for me, it's so much more rewarding to look at something everyone thinks is terrible and see what it has to teach me. And these bad movie musicals, as awful as they are, have taught me a lot.